Hello everybody. Today I'll be talking about another practice that helped me to improve my creative writing. As a child, I grew up in cantonments and they were usually outside the city in a lot of wilderness. So the only source of recreation for me was the library. And I used to hang out in the library quite a lot, reading a lot of books, issuing a lot of books to be read at home. And I have been a voracious reader since, and I have read many genres of books from literature from the modern era, postmodern era, romantic literature, classics, self-help books, so on and so forth. So I also had a penchant for writing since my childhood, and whenever someone would ask me, what do you want to do or what do you do in your spare time, and I would say that I write or I would like to be a writer. And the immediate response that I would get is that you should read a lot. And this happened to me even while I was growing up, and whenever I professed an interest for writing, the immediate advice that I received was read a lot. But I had been reading, so this really puzzled me. What do these people actually mean by, telling me to read a lot? I do read. And then what is it in my creative writing? What is it in my writing that is not reaching that level? At least I was not much satisfied with my creative writing. The immediate downloads that happened, which I've talked about previously in my other video, which I recorded a little earlier, few months back, in which I've talked about the downloads that happen, and they usually would be in the form of poetry. But when I would sit down and work at a piece of creative writing, prose especially, I never felt satisfied with what I achieved. I wanted to know what is it specifically that we can learn from reading. Of course, my attention would be diverted to words, or it would be engrossed in the various figures of speech like allegory, metaphors and hyperbole, so on and so forth, but there was something much more because I was using all that. Then what is it specifically that when everyone says read a lot to write better, what is it that they want writers to achieve? And and maybe it is a knack for writing, of course, that comes, but to be able to work at it with the technique, I felt would make my writing very precise, would also make me satisfied with the results that I get from my writing. So this curtain was opened for me when I was pursuing my master's, and our professor handed us out the list of essay questions for that semester, and that one of the questions talked about rhyming action or image, and discussed that in context of certain pieces of text that we'd read. We had not yet discussed rhyming action or image in our classroom sessions. That was to happen in the following week. But I was intrigued by the phrase. It had such a lyrical tilt to it, and it was something new. So immediately I looked it up on Google. I found this essay by Charles Baxter called Rhyming Action, and I read it. Baxter has infused a lot of wit, humor and sarcasm in writing this essay, and he talks about the trials, tribulations and challenges that creative writers, whether writers of poetry or writers of prose, face while infusing intense action, drama and other elements which leave a lasting effect on the readers. And he has supported each of his arguments, each of his concepts with number of illustrations. He has shared excerpts and pointed out how this concept or how this technique has been used. So that explained to me, that essay explained to me a lot about rhyming action or rhyming image, and I was filled up with a lot of enthusiasm and zest. Immediately, armed with that knowledge of that particular technique, I turned my attention towards whatever those two texts that were supposed to be viewed in light of rhyming action or image that my essay question talked about. I read them. And I could point out, I could actually pick out instances wherein this technique had been employed by both the writers. And for me, it was a whole new vista of reading and writing that opened up for me. I derived more pleasure, more value, and more experience out of my reading. I had read those pieces of text and I had picked up the traditional methods, techniques that I knew of, and pointed them out and used them in my discussion to develop some kind of review or understanding and appreciation of the text. But this new knowledge of this new technique helped me to appreciate the text even better. More than that, deriving more value out of my reading, I was encouraged and motivated to use the same technique while I was practicing my writing. And how to do it was clearly explained to me in the essay through illustrations, was brought out to me in the pieces of text that I used using the lens of new knowledge that I got through this essay. So I continued with my master's by God's grace. I completed it. There were many new techniques, there were many new tools that we were exposed to for writing prose, because I took up prose writing, and my master's came to an end. However, I wanted to keep my process of learning a continuous one. That is how I want to do it for life, and I hope we all can do much better by being learners throughout our life. So what I did was I decided to order the book, because I had issued the book during my master's days because I wanted to read the essay myself. I also read one or two other essays from the book, and with the knowledge of those techniques, I read the same piece of text, but though my time did not allow me that, not being a student of literature at all, so there was a lot that I had to cover up for. But this new knowledge simplified things for me, so to say, to understand my reading, what I was reading, and to improve my writing. So the first thing that I did post my return from the UK was order the book for me. So this is the Indian edition of the book, Burning Down the House by Charles Baxter. It is the second expanded edition, and it has a number of essays. There are 10 to 12 essays, and he talks about various techniques like regarding happiness, stillness, of course rhyming action is here, on defamiliarization, counterpointed characterization. So these are techniques that writers, established, renowned, applauded writers employ in their writing. And Baxter has gone on to explain what is the effect of these techniques on the reader, how a more pronounced and a better effect can be achieved. And in areas, in certain portions, in certain essays, he's even pointed out where the use of the technique has fallen flat. So what I did was, I read one essay and imbibed it, internalized whatever Baxter was trying to say, reread it one or two times to get more familiar with his concept and idea. And then I returned to a text that I was very familiar with, very comfortable with. So it was The Vegetarian by Han Kang, because I did my paper on it. So I had practically chewed that book from cover to cover. And if someone looks at the state of the copy of that novel with me, one would know what that book has undergone. So I returned to that familiar piece of prose that I really liked, I wanted to read, and then, armed with the knowledge of this new technique, I reread that. And so with the intention that I could pick out instances, I could pick out excerpts where that technique had been employed by the writer. And I did this with each and every essay that I read and went back to the same novel. Sometimes the use of that technique was there, sometimes the technique was not used. But I found a good 5 or 6 techniques, especially rhyming action, show versus tell, and regarding happiness, stillness. These have been used in various instances by Han Kang while writing The Vegetarian. So that in itself, reading the book, viewing it in different lens, opened a new vista for me. It changed the meaning of reading for me. It changed the meaning of the book for me. It it motivated me, encouraged me that now I can understand, now I can discern, now I can decipher, and now I know, so I can employ it in my writing. I believe the short stories that I wrote, that few of them, after such a practice, they have a better construction, plot, and are of higher value for the reader, because I applied certain of these techniques in my writing. And also, now whenever I read a new piece, I don't read as a reader, as an ordinary reader, or a voracious reader, or an intelligent reader. I read specifically as a writer. So for me, now every book has become a textbook, and what is it that I want to pick up from that textbook is given to me through this book. There are many other books in the market that will help you to understand creative writing, tools and techniques in creative writing, which I recommend that everybody should read. So read one chapter at a time, return to a familiar piece of text that you like to read, that resonates with you, so that you don't mind returning to it. And you have read it many times, so that you're not engrossed with the story, plot, characterization, or any other thing. You're now focused on reading as a writer and seeing where the writer has played with technique, form, structure, and other tools that we writers have, so that you make notes for yourself and you understand the process of writing. There's another book by Charles Paxton himself. There's this list of books. He's written 12 books, and another one, non-fiction, which is very helpful for writers, has a mention here in this list. I have not yet read it. I want to read it next, but there's also a growing pile of books that I want to read. So maybe that'll happen a little later. And the title of that book is The Art of Subtext Beyond Plot. I will leave a link to this book. I bought it in India, so I'll leave a link to this book in the bio. It will also be in the video. I hope this practice that I learned and I developed will also help you to improve your creative writing. And do get in touch with me whether this video was helpful, or if you employed any of the techniques, or if you followed or any of the suggestions that I made in this video, and to what effect. I would really like to hear from you. And do like and subscribe if you think the videos are good enough for you and are helpful. Thank you for today.